Want to do a roll call vote, please, and any teleconference disclosures we might need?
Just double check and make sure I have this recording. All right. We'll start with Director Melanie Bagby. Present. Director Janice Cater-Thompson.
Present.
Director Chris Corsi has informed me he would not be present today. Director Gerard Giudice.
Here.
Director Susan Harvey.
Here.
We have Director David Hagley sitting in for Ariel Kelly from the city of Healdsburg.
Here.
Let's see, Director Sandra Lowe.
Here.
Director David Rabbit had informed me he will not be in today. Director Rosa Reynosa had also informed me she will not be here today. Similar with Vice Chair Hopkins, and then Chair Chris Rogers.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Great. And just for the public's edification, our Board of Supervisors is in the process of adopting their budget, hopefully, fingers crossed. So that's why we have 3 members who are out today in regard to that. Let's start with our public comment on items not on the regular agenda. If you're here,
Yes, sir.
Mr. DeWitt, come on up.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I want to thank the administration for adjusting the public comment in the minutes for the May 8th meeting and accurately reflecting what I had talked about with those affordable housing units not being built because the city of Santa Rosa staff are deciding that a 50-foot bike path was more important. With that in mind, 65 years ago, the city of Copenhagen, Denmark, began a process of moving cars out of their city. And the way they did that was they would just take parking spaces away, and cars basically had to find another spot to go. They did it so well that Copenhagen became a city that's world renowned for walking streets. And those walking streets, pedestrian shopping areas, have allowed that city to thrive. In the past, at various meetings of the city of Santa Rosa, I would bring this up, and the downtown business associations, the Chamber of Commerce, which has a stranglehold on the decision-making for policies in that city, basically would poo-poo the idea. Can't be having walking streets. We're not about pedestrians downtown, and it's always been about the car. So much so, they spent $15 million redoing their downtown square there to put in 40 parking spaces. I think that's really important for you folks to know as policymakers, because you receive money from both the state and the federal government that essentially is being sought because you're saying you're going to lower the amount of people who drive cars and do traffic. So here's a couple of ideas that are basically used internationally. You may find them difficult, but one is called clear the corners. That's also a safety situation. They don't allow cars to park near the corners of intersections so that people can be safe if they're walking or riding a bike. And it's at least 2 car lengths back in many cities, so that on the right, if you're going to make that right-hand turn, it's easier for you to get over there also. So that is less idling waiting in traffic. And that's called reducing the idle. So there was a program here by the Spare the Air folks. It's been going on for at least a decade. And that has been idle free. And they've basically been advocating that we get people to turn off their cars and traffic, stuff like that. So one of the things that I was hoping that you folks could begin to do now that we're in these hybrid meetings, and I hope you'll stay in them forever now so that you have more attendance, is that you'll have a coordinated effort to clear the corners, especially in urban areas. That lowers traffic, that allows people to turn right and not be sitting there idling, and get people moving along. It's something that you might think is counterintuitive, but it's like, hey, that is something that will cause less pollution because there's less idling. And then retiming many of the traffic lights, that will also free it up so people don't sit in traffic for long times idling. Thank you for your time. I'm going to come back on consent calendar, please.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. DeWitt. Are there any other hands on Zoom?
I see your hand.
All right, that's perfect. Then we'll keep moving through our agenda. We've got our consent calendar Does anybody want to pull anything from the consent calendar? All eyes looking at our friend from Healdsburg. All right, let's do public comment on the consent calendar. Mr. DeWitt, if you want to come back up.
Yes, sir. Excuse me, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland on item 4B, 4.3. The obligation history for the One Bay Area grant. That's a really good looking document. I didn't look at all of the cities involved or all that information. I focused directly on Santa Rosa's funding obligation history. And that's because 15 years ago, I was a member of what was called the Roseland Community-Based Transportation Plan. And they came to us in Roseland. We met out there on the west side of town and talked about how we could get better things going. After it was discussed, not much ever happened on it. And the director then left, Fabian Favela. And now we've got a different director there in Santa Rosa for the transportation activity stuff. And there's not a real lot of authentic community engagement, of really involving the people who you want to have be involved in many of your transit projects. Basically, as I understand it, the transit is there for the public. And I am near a transit turnaround. And what I see every day is loads of big empty buses going by all the time. And they're going over the tracks for the smart rail. I'm just down from them also. And that's not full. I've never seen one of those trains full. And I see a lot of them on a daily basis. I've gone on it a few times. One of the things I think is really important in a funding obligation history is to get some sort of a narrative to have it there. So not just the governmental agency that gave you the money, but the public that's involved in paying the taxes understands, is anything that you're doing actually having the effect that you say you want to occur? An efficiency type of matrix that shows, yes, we want to have, let's just pick a number, 20 passengers on a bus on these routes, and then actually have that, because it's not happening. And I ride buses all over. I got my schedule for Golden Gate Transit. The new one just started yesterday. And I get on that bus to go to the city, not smart. The thing about all this is that you folks are here, you're spending your valuable time to come in, and you've got a downtown connectivity to support housing density intensification project coming forward under OBAG. And it says 2026. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about how you're not getting the densification that you might want in these downtown areas, even though they've been talking about it for 30 years. 20 years ago, I was fortunate to go back to a university that has a University of California Transportation Center. And those folks have been studying this all the time. What they came up with is you need to make it cost effective in the downtown areas to actually get your housing at these places where you're going to have your smart stops and where you're going to have your transit work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Any public comment?
I'm not seeing any members of the public with their hands up besides Chris Rogers.
Yeah,
Do you
that's
want me to
so
promote you
the
into it?
yeah. If you promote me, I can
Okay.
see whether we have hands.
Okay, that was one I wanted to confirm just in case, or whether we were being otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay,
Perfect. I'll bring it back to the board then. Are there any additional questions or a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion from Runner Park and a second from Katati. Any additional discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, let's move on to our next item then. First item of our regular calendar, item 5.1.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 5.1 is a brief update on the Climate Protection Initiative. We have Jessica and Aaron here from EMC Research to talk just a little bit more about the polling that is going to happen pending action today to give the final authority to proceed. And this is related to the effort to consider a revenue measure for climate resilience and mitigation against greenhouse gas emissions. So I will turn it over to Jessica and Aaron to just walk through a couple of the logistics. The executive committee didn't meet today. and discussed sort of the final language of the poll and gave a thumbs up on that. As you'll recall, we're not going to go through all of that level of detail in this venue, but there were a couple of topics that I think Jessica and Aaron were seeking full board discussion on. So with that, I will hand it to EMC.
Great, thank you so much. And I, again, Jessica Polsky-Sanchez with EMC Research, joined by Aaron Kelly. Just wanted to give you just a brief overview of where we landed when it comes to this poll. We are designing a survey to help us understand the level of support for a potential Sonoma County climate resilience measure among likely voters. We are going to be utilizing a split sample methodology, which we talked a little bit about the last time I was before you, which is a tool that we use to be able to test two potential different mechanisms for funding. In this case, we are going to test a parcel tax compared to a potential sales tax. So respondents will be randomly assigned to hear about either one or the other. And so we get an unbiased read on support for each of the different mechanisms, and then we can provide a recommendation about whether one or the other is preferred by voters. In addition to understanding the level of support for a potential measure, the questionnaire is designed to give us feedback from voters about their current issue priorities for the county overall, kind of the relative importance of some of the key projects that are included in a potential ballot measure, the impact of additional information about the benefits of a ballot measure, and also help us understand the impact of negative information that could be put out by potential opponents of a measure. So as I mentioned, we are using split sample methodology, but one of the decision points that we have yet to make is regarding the overall sample size. So we prepared just a really brief slide to try and discuss kind of the considerations that we're hoping you might weigh in on. So I think Drew has that slide to share.
One moment.
I can certainly discuss it without the show. There we go. Okay, thank you so much. So wanted to give you a sense of what we're deciding on here. So there are two overall sample size options, both of which have been approved under our agreement. One is an overall sample size of 600 interviews. The other is an overall sample size of 800 interviews. The overall margin of error ranges from 4 percentage points to 3.5 percentage points. So not a lot of difference overall in the reliability of results. But as we mentioned, we are using that split sample methodology. So when we're looking at the split, so each sample for an overall sample size of 600 interviews, with 300 interviews in each split, it'll be plus or minus 5.7 percentage points in each split, compared to the overall sample size of 800 interviews, where we'll have a margin of error of plus or minus 4.9 percentage points in each split sample. There's also, of course, a cost implication based on the number of interviews. So we wanted to show you what the cost difference is between the two overall sample sizes. And one of the things that we've talked about is that given that this is an initial poll on this measure, this potential measure, it might make sense to go with the smaller overall interview sample size, because that would save potentially some funding if we do see feasibility for a potential measure for any future research down the road, rather than going with the larger overall sample size, which gives us a little bit better reliability, both overall and by split sample, but leaves potentially less budget for future research. So I wanted to just sort of explain those trade-offs and answer any questions that you might have.
Do we have any questions, Sandra?
How long does what's the time on the timing of the, how long the poll takes? How many minutes?
Yeah, it's a healthy 15 minutes right now, maybe closer to 16 minutes. We are trying to keep it as close to 15 minutes as possible. which is a pretty standard length for this type of research.
Any other questions from the board?
Thanks, Chair.
Director Judice?
What did we budget for this initially? I forget.
50.
50? Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go to public comment on the item. I see at least one hand on Zoom. Mr. DeWitt, let's go to you first.
Thank you, sir. Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland, and I believe you should go with the 800 interviews the first time around. Better reliability is a questionable situation, but we need to get more reliable data as soon as possible because there are a number of people out there already saying they don't want any more taxes. And so you folks are going to be out there saying, we want more taxes and this is why. You need to explain it really well, why you need these extra taxes. A 400 split, you might get a approach where you could go towards the previous folks who do not support tax measures. You have to convince them. You'll always get your echo chamber folks. You'll always get your folks that are supportive of what is being proposed because they are benefited by it. You need to convince folks who don't support these things that this is somehow for the good. Did you get a chance to go to the car shows this weekend? There was a cruise here in Santa Rosa. People were eating it up. It was packed. The car show was packed at the fairgrounds. People drive cars. They like cars, and that's just part of what they do. Essentially, this is an organization that's geared towards behavior modification. You're a government organization that gets money and then tries to change people's behavior. So I'm hoping that you'll do it in such a way that you'll succeed at what you say needs to be done. All right. Now, you look at me and say, well, that guy drives an old car, so he's a critic. Did you ever read the book Skeptical Environmentalist? It's been out about 20 years. A guy in Denmark wrote it. And essentially, he pointed out that there are many different ways we could be helping the environment cheaper, sooner than what gets proposed frequently by jurisdictional agencies. So give it a look. It's old news, but I think it's really important here in Sonoma County because you got a lot of folks here that are just not geared in to your mandate, if you will, your approach. Now, me, I mentioned earlier that it's been 16 years ago, I was on a Roseland community-based transportation plan. And it's been 7 years ago, I was on the Roseland Priority Development Area Plan. And I had gone to MTC for decades, advocating there be a priority development area along Sebastopol Road. And it hasn't really been happening yet. It takes a long time to get this behavior modification that you folks want. So please get your staff to write up some really good bullet points, simple to understand as to why what you're proposing to do is actually going to be effective, be implemented, and change that behavior of all those folks. Hopefully coming to that next car show, that one I brought you a flyer for, the 1st of July, over at Vets Memorial Building. We'll be there. Come on down. You can walk if you want.
Thank you so much, Mr. DeWitt. Go to Zoom with Rick Lutman.
Thank you. Could we get some explanation of what a split sample is?
Yep, we can definitely do that. Did you have any additional comments or questions?
No.
Okay. Seeing no other hands, I'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. And we'll go ahead and ask either Aaron or Jessica. Can either of you kind of give a little bit more context around what we mean by split sample?
Sure. Just want to reiterate that half of respondents will be asked about a potential parcel tax measure and the other half about a potential sales tax measure. And so that's what we mean by a split sample. Respondents will be randomly assigned to hear about one or the other. So with 300 in each sample for an overall sample size of 600 or 400 in each split sample for an overall sample size of 800.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and bring it back to the board, see if there's any additional questions. And if not, I will entertain a motion.
What were you looking for, just to move forward?
Which, yeah, 600 or 800, we've got to make a decision and move forward with that.
Personally,
Yes,
800.
800?
Second that. We need more information early.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Any additional discussion? We've got a motion on the table to do the 800 sample and a second. So motion from Director Giudice and a second from Director Bagby. Any other discussion? Great. Drew, call the vote.
We can do unanimous since all board
Acclamation.
members are in person, or I
Sure.
can do a roll call if you'd like, Chair.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Looks like we've got our direction, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 5.2.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Directors. So this item is on the Safe Routes, the Countywide Safe Routes to School program, and SCTA receives federal funding for the program and is responsible for program implementation. The funding is programmed through by MTC through the One Bay Area Grant Program, and SCTA obligated funds for the next 4 years earlier this year. The Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition is our contractor for implementation of the program. And the contract amendment you approved under the consent calendar allows this program to continue for an additional 4 years. So the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition has been involved in Safe Routes to School for several years and has served hundreds of schools throughout Sonoma County through its education, encouragement, engineering, equity, and evaluation program for walking and bicycling to school. Their passion for bike education and creative engagement shows through the increasing number of schools that have been applying to participate in the program and the stellar feedback that they receive from students, teachers, and parents. And with that, I will turn it over to Christina Panza, who's the program director for the Countywide Safe Routes to School program.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I'm excited to report on the status of Safe Routes to School this year. Before I get into the program details, I just want to share this slide. It was an infographic that was created by the Safe Routes to School National Partnership that highlights all the potential benefits of Safe Routes to School programs and projects. So we run the program, the non-infrastructure program, but Safe Routes to School really does encompass more than just our program. It encompasses engineering projects, it encompasses enforcement initiatives. So keep that in mind when you look at these benefits, but traffic safety, cost savings, safety from crime, healthier students, all of these things can be benefits of our Safe Routes to School program. I'll talk about a little bit about the funding. So we've had a contract, we're in the 5th year of a 5-year contract, as Dana was saying. As of May 31st, we expended 91% of the funds available. We project to spend another 50,000 or so in June, and we do anticipate rolling over about 100,000 into our new contract, which is mostly because of COVID and also the fires that we had a budget that were under budget. But I just want to also let you know that in the past 2 years, we've actually compensated for that shortfall significantly. And even though we'll be rolling over 100K into the next contract, we expect to expend all of the funding, and it's already fairly evident that we need to supplement our funding in order to meet the demand for the program going forward. Components of our program, is that showing up? Okay, great. It looks black there.
Yeah, it looks like there we go.
Oh, there it is.
There
Okay.
it is.
In 2023, again, as with last year, we were able to implement all of our in-person program components. We're no longer, having COVID restrictions in any way. And we kept a lot of the additions that we added last year as a result, or, that we added during COVID as a result of the pivoting we did that year. And I'm going to elaborate on all of these components, but I just wanted a slide that summarized them all. So I'm not going to go through this list right now, but just so you can see it. And also I want to show you our timeline. You've seen this before, those of you who have been on the SCTA board in the past, but our program is a year-round program. Even though it's a school-based program, we are operating programming initiatives year-round. So we have in the school year, we're doing monthly walk and roll encouragement. events every month and the countywide events in October, November, and May. But all of our participating schools also do monthly events. We do education during the school year. We do evaluation and enforcement and engineering support during the school year, but we're planning during the summer as well for all of these initiatives. So that slide is important to be aware of. We start every school year with every school with evaluation. Part of the evaluation is doing mapping of where students live in relation to schools to determine the potential for active transportation in any given school, and also the best approach to the encouragement program at that site. So this is an example of a GIS map that we developed for Helen Lehman Elementary in Santa Rosa. And you can see that at this school, about 10% of the students live within a quarter mile, about 27% live within a half a mile, 90% live within a mile, and 95% live within 2 miles. And you can also kind of see the clusters of kids over to the sort of east side of the map, not to the northeast, but kind of directly to the east of the school. And all those kids live on the other side of the railroad tracks that right now is still like they can't access because it's not open crossing. So those kids can't really get to school easily right now. And you can kind of see that in the travel modes because we look at every year we ask teachers to ask students how they get to and from school. We do this in the fall. So based on the tallies that were done at Helen Lehman in the fall, about less than 15% of the kids are walking and biking to school, and like close to 70% of the kids are taking single family vehicles. There is a bus population, kids that are bused to Helen Lehman. A lot of schools don't have school buses anymore, but Helen Lehman is not one of them. Anyway, we look at all this data. We compare the number of kids who walk and bike to the number of kids who live within the half mile or 1 mile radius of the school to kind of determine, like, is there potential for mode shift? What initiatives would be best for the school? Can we establish a meetup spot that will help kids in a certain area get to school? So we use this data at the beginning of the year for the programming. So then we talk about encouragement. Our encouragement program consists of suggested monthly themed walk and roll to school days on the first week of each month. And we also have a monthly walk and roll to school challenge activity that we give to schools every month. As well, these are the themes from this year. We had 45 schools participate in our comprehensive encouragement program. That means that those schools were doing multiple events per year, and they were also sharing challenges. So they kind of all are establishing a culture of active transportation at their schools. There were another 15 or so schools that did 1 or 2 events this year. So we served about 60 schools this year with some form of encouragement programming, but 45 of them were doing like robust encouragement during the school year using many of these themes and challenges. And this is just an example of some of the graphic promotional infographics that we share with schools that we develop for them to make it easy for them to share our encouragement programming and our themes. Like we had Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day in November. We had Walk and Roll for Your Hearts, Heart Healthy Month in February. They did an art contest. We had a Walk and Roll for Wheels in December with a scavenger hunt. We did a March for Miles challenge. We had an April Green Earth challenge. Every month is different, and every month is really emphasizing the benefits of walking and biking to school and trying to get kids excited about it and feeling like good about it. And these are some of our challenges from last year. We did a month map your route to school challenge in September. We kind of like to start the school year with that, so kids are thinking about their safe route to school. We partnered with AAA on the Ruby Bridges Day, so they actually sent school a bunch of swag if they registered for that event. So kids, they were giving out hats and all kinds of cool stuff. And then schools actually celebrated like a day of diversity and had days of dialogue in relation to equity and diversity and celebrating the achievements of Ruby Bridges, the civil rights icon. So these are just some examples of the challenges that we give out that schools share, teachers share, parents can do with their kids. They're really just open. And this is just a fun slide. This is some of the winning art from our art contest. This is the 3rd year that we've done a Walk and Roll for Our Hearts art contest, and we develop a promotional calendar. This calendar goes to the winners, the teacher of the winners, the principal of the winners, and all of our champions at all of our schools, so that they're reminded about the Safe Routes program every month. And I want to give this to you, Susan, because thank you so much for being like here, and you've been amazing, and congratulations on your retirement. So moving on, we did have Bike to School Day again for the second year in a row this year. That was in May. It's a countywide event, meaning we invited schools that aren't necessarily in a comprehensive program to enroll for this event. And we had 53 schools participate this year. Last year it was 48. And this year it rained. So the participation wasn't like exponentially higher than the normal, although what we noticed is that schools that established bike to school meetup spots were like with bike trains, kids, they had much higher biking numbers. So we really see the benefit of establishing those meetup spots, building community through biking to school together. So that's something that we really want to emphasize next year as well. In addition to the walk and roll encouragement programs, we also do education. We visit schools every year at the second or third, we pick one of those grade levels, for pedestrian safety, fourth grade bike basics, and fifth grade communication and mapping lessons that we do. We also developed a virtual curriculum during COVID, and we did virtual curriculum like online Zoom lessons with kids in the second, fourth, and fifth grade during COVID. But the virtual videos that we created for the middle school we're still using, because we give those to PE teachers who can then use them in their PE classes. So that has enabled us to really expand our reach with middle school students, teaching them drive your bike, because we can't be everywhere with bikes and with like even our staff all over the county. So we really try to get to schools in other ways. So that's been really good. Our fourth grade bike rodeos are sort of like the anchor of our program. It's what every single school wants. Once they get it, they never want to not be in our program. This past year, we did 33 schools. It's the highest number of schools we've ever done. For the bike rodeos, kids get trained on bike during the school day. It's completely equitable. Every school, every student can participate. They can get their bikes repaired. We have a bike fleet in case they don't have a bike. They get helmets for $5, thanks to Providence Health Foundation and a partnership with them.
Nice.
We get them on bike during the school day and they learn the basics. They know that they have to signal. They know they have to ride on the right. They know they have to obey stop signs and behave like a vehicle. So that's the goal of the bike rodeo. And then at the middle school level, again, like I was saying, we do bike education as well. We can't be on site in every middle school, but we really try to do what we can to get as many kids as possible at the middle school educated. We have a few schools that we do on bike ed with on the campus. We have some schools that we did after school bike clubs with. We had some schools we worked with PE teachers to implement the videos. This year we served 11 middle schools. Last year it was 6. So we more than doubled our middle school reach this year. And that's not just because of the virtual curriculum. It was, doing an assembly, really getting more, there's more demand for this program than ever. This is another program that we have with engaging middle school kids. This is our first year of doing this particular class. It's called Drive Your Bike. It's going to be at CHOPS Teen Club. If you have a teen, registration is still open. It's on Thursday, June 22nd. We are going to be giving the teens that participate either a free bike helmet or a free bike lock for participating in this class. And we're going to go on a ride with them on the road. It's going to be a really great class. CHOPS is going to have snacks. It's going to be fun. So anyway, sign your teen up if you have a teen or let them know about it. We're also doing, community-wide learn to ride a bike lessons for the little ones. These lessons are great because a lot of times the kids taking these lessons are older kids whose parents have not successfully taught them how to ride a bike. I mean, we do have a lot of younger kids in it too, but like what's great is when we can teach that older kid to ride because they're really ready to get out on the road and maybe even ride to school or ride to the store. So those are great. We've been doing them in Santa Rosa, Windsor, and Petaluma since the pandemic. We started doing those during the pandemic and continued because there's been a great demand. We filled almost every learn to ride class in every city every month. In addition to that, we do family bike workshops. We've been doing those this year in person again. We had virtual bike workshops during COVID. Last year, we stepped up and did full workshops again. And this year, again, doing full workshops. We're rotate around the county. Our next workshop's in June. We have 10 families on the waiting list for the June workshop. So they can be super popular. We're also partnering with the CHP in both Petaluma and Windsor so that everyone that attends the workshop will get a free helmet. if they want one. So that's cool. That's actually probably one of the reasons we have 10 families on the waiting list in Petaluma. So that's a cool thing. And then also this year, for the second year in Santa Rosa, we are doing a kids bike adventure camp. That's happening right now as we speak at Finley Park. Actually not right this minute, it ended at 1, but so this is a really fun week-long camp where we teach kids to just have fun with bikes, and we go on the road with them every day, and they really become like bike ambassadors. Those kids that take that camp, they become very experienced with bicycling and just really, come out of it just loving everything about the bike. We also partner with the many bike shops in Sonoma County and also the Bay Area Bikemobile to provide free bike repairs to many kids. The Bikemobile is funded outside of our program through a different MTC grant. They came to 25 schools and repaired, like heavily repaired, about 304 bikes at the schools that they visited after school. But we also contract with our program, with our county funding, with bike shops to come during our 4th grade bike rodeos and do bike repairs on all the 4th graders that bring their bikes. And I don't even have a total for that right now because we don't have our spring totals, but in the fall we did 12 rodeos and we repaired 400 bikes. And this spring we did 23 rodeos. So, I mean, over 1,000 bikes probably got repaired this spring through our rodeo program. We also do community outreach and engagement. Last year was low because post-COVID, and the year before we didn't do any of it, but we're back in full swing this year. We do outreach at community and school events. We do PTA and PFO presentations. We do school staff meeting presentations. We organize and attend community task forces on Safe Routes to School and attend other community meetings where we can, be a voice for Safe Routes to School and provide support for walk and roll days at schools when they need it. And we reached about close to 2,000 people with just our community outreach that we did this year. This slide is just showing students reached with Safe Routes education this year. This does not include the community outreach. But again, this number is higher than last year. Last year, we served 31 schools and 6,227 students. This year, we served 35, because the 4th grade is probably the bar for the number of schools, and 7,786 students with education, which is why we spent about $427,000 this year. And I don't know if we'll be able to continue that level of numbers next year, but we're going to try. We're going to try to bring it in. And then I just want to share that this spring, we did a parent survey. We are still collecting responses, so I don't have any data on that right now, but I will say that we've gotten over 1,400 responses to our parent survey. And we developed this survey to get not just feedback on like attitudes and travel behavior, but like, what are your concerns? Where are your concerns? What is stopping you from walking or biking to school infrastructure wise? So we're collecting those comments and we're going to collate them and share them with each city. And hopefully that will help the cities inform their active transportation plans and, their Safe Routes to School plans and other plans going forward to try to really target, where we need to make improvements to the infrastructure to enable more kids to walk and bike to school. And I want to continue that work with really working with cities to help identify those pinch points and just really being a support for cities as they move to consider where improvements should be made and where parking should be removed to put in bike lanes. Those hard decisions have to be made sometimes. And sometimes like hearing parent voices is really important. And you don't always hear them at the city council meetings because they're busy making dinner for their kids. So, it's really important to hear those voices. I just want to share our Sonoma Safe Routes website. This picture is from last year, but it's like my favorite picture of all time. All the other pictures in this presentation were from this year. But this is our website and our handle for social media. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and whatever our current challenges is up on our website. You can also see where we are involved with the task force. You can see what our education programs are. You can also go to bikesonoma.org, which is the Bike Coalition website, to see where our current family bike workshops are or where our current bike rodeos are. Those are up there. That's where you register for those. So that's everything I wanted to talk about, but I will stop in case you guys have any questions or comments about Safe Routes, it's just my pleasure to run this program. And I've enjoyed working with many of you, with Melanie, with Chris, and others in this room to make this program happen. So thank you.
No, thank you. I'll bring it back, see if there's any questions. Director Bagby.
All things. Yeah, I'm always just a little jarred when I hear you introduced as Christina, because I know you as Tina. So
And you can call me Tina. I keep calling her, that's my nickname. I'm fine with being called Tina, but I've sort of tried to, I'm transitioning to Christina.
oh, I guess it is more
It's
grown up.
Either
so.
one, either way. Is
Well,
fine.
I don't know if you've ever seen her in action at these events. It really is so much fun to work with, well, Tina or Christina, whoever decides to show up. So, but I did have a couple of questions. I noticed that doesn't seem to be a bike rodeo scheduled in Cloverdale anytime soon. Is that something we can expect to?
Well, Cloverdale was tricky because Jefferson wasn't able to host the bike rodeo on their campus. And then for a year or two, we did the bike rodeo at the fairgrounds, and that was logistically very challenging.
Yep, I was there.
And
It was tough.
It was challenging, and that just didn't work out. We have offered to work with Washington, but they haven't enrolled in the program, and schools do need to opt in for us to communicate with them. But yeah, I mean, we did a family bike workshop last year in Cloverdale. We didn't do one this year, but we certainly be open to that next year. And
then I wonder, as far as like the workshops too, just to kind of follow up on that, do you have any plans to work with high schools in the maker areas? Because the Cloverdale High School has a really great maker space with kids who might be interested in.
I love that idea. At this time, I don't have specific plans to do that, only because of, budget and staff constraints more than anything. I mean, our program's really focused on K-8. We do allow high schools to enroll, and we, when they do enroll, we communicate with them and we try to meet them where they're at within our capacity. And we've done like a driver bike class at a high school. We've done an assembly. We've come in and do helped with a walk roll day, things like that. But it's a little bit piecemeal right now. Without additional funding and staffing, it would be really hard for me to expand into the high school realm.
Oh, I gotcha. But on those two things if you need to make a connection with the middle school or high school, I'm happy to
please let the middle school know. I mean, again, schools have to enroll. There is an enrollment period. We open up enrollment in March. We close it in mid-May for priority enrollment, because we have to make decisions about which schools that we're serving to plan out our entire year well in advance. Like our fall rodeos are all scheduled now.
Right. Well, that's good to know. So that's
so if they don't enroll by mid-May, schools can enroll later. If they enroll in November, I'll call them. I will talk to them and I'll see what I can do. But in terms of fitting in a service that requires coordination and staff time and us to visit, it's really hard to push to add that in later in the year.
Great. Oh, that's good to know. And so I will try to help you make those connections. And then just two quick comments. I'm just so happy to see that you're making not only wearing your helmet, but strapping on your, that just drives me nuts when I see that. And then secondly, I'm just very, very pleased to see those videos that were developed during COVID that are having a second life, because it's such an effective way to, use video as a continuing ed. It's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. So thanks so much for the presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much for working our communities. And I know we'll be working together again soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you.
Any other questions for the board? Director Giudice?
We'd love to have you down to Roanoke Park and Cotati to address the education committee in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I would love to. Absolutely. Okay. And just email me, invite me. And just so you know, all the elementary schools in Roanoke Park are enrolled in the program for next year. Except for, technology middle school isn't, but in the middle schools aren't. But John Reed was the only outlier that hadn't enrolled, and they are enrolled this year. Han does not get a bike rodeo. They haven't asked for one, but they usually do encouragement at least a couple times a year. Okay. But all the other schools are getting bike rodeos next year in education.
Yeah, because I think we have some newer safe routes with the Quick Strike grant that we got. We have 13 new bike and pedestrian crossings.
That's awesome.
With, the flashing lights.
And again, I mean, me being aware of that and being able to communicate, a lot of times that there's that disconnect between the cities and what they're doing and what we're doing, and trying to bring that together in different ways. We did form a task force in Santa Rosa this year. It's a pilot. We're just trying it. Santa Rosa is a really big city, but we want to try to bring together the school community with the city, public works, and like law enforcement, and kind of break down those silos and keep those communication channels open. And I'm piloting that this year. I don't know that I could facilitate that in every city, just capacity wise, but certainly I'm willing to come to city meetings and like be a conduit and share data and try to help.
Thank you.
Right, Director Kelly Standen.
Ouch.
Ouch.
A couple questions. Are these programs available for private schools as well?
Yeah, we don't bar anybody from enrolling in the program. We do look, I mean, if this year we had 59 schools enroll. So this is like 10 more schools than we had last year. So this is like the first year we're actually looking at going, oh no, do we have the actual money to serve all these schools, and figuring out like, maybe there's a school that we have to say no to. So we have to look at all the factors, demographics, where kids live in relation to the school location, try to distribute ourselves in a fair way. So private schools can get like down lower on the list just because the kids don't necessarily live close to the school. And then their demographics are like usually like they're not low income. And so we're trying to serve kids with the highest need. But that's not to say that we don't serve private schools, and we just do our very best. And we do have a couple of private schools that enrolled for next year, one in Petaluma and I think one in Santa Rosa. I have to go back and look. I can't remember where the other one is.
Yeah, because I think for Healdsburg, we've got, 3.
Yeah, St. John's and the
St.
Healdsburg
John's,
School. Yeah.
Healdsburg School, and
Yeah.
then the
St.
Healdsburg
John's has
Elementary.
participated in Walk and Roll to School Day. They didn't last year, but they had for many years. And the Healdsburg School did like a challenge one time, promoted one of our challenges, but haven't really enrolled in the program. But anyone can like a lot of the things that we do, you don't need to enroll in the program to do. Like a private school could go on our website, they could have a walk roll day, they could share a challenge, they can promote walking and biking. I could meet with them one time and kind of share all the information about what they could do, and they could just run with it, especially if they've got the capacity. A lot of times schools don't have the capacity because they're so stretched as it is to like put on like a walk roll day or like, push out a challenge. So we really look at where schools are and try to meet them where they're at and support them where they need the support.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, I have a 10 and 12-year-old, so this is like right in the middle
Yeah.
of where we're at right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hagley. Any other questions? All right, let's go to public comment.
Thank you.
Come on up, Mr. DeWitt.
Hello. How have you been? Good. All right. Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland, and actually met this nice lady at Roseland School in the past, volunteering for these types of activities. One of the things that I hope you'll be supportive of as you renew this program is under the encouragement program, something that wasn't mentioned today, somehow clarifying to the owners of the bicycles, they won't get stolen. There needs to be bicycle safety at the school sites. And I've been told by people in my area, I live near 4 elementary schools, Dutton Meadow, Roseland Shepherd, and Roseland Creek Elementary, that the bikes are prone to getting stolen. I don't know if you folks are aware of the program that's operated by the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. They put out what are called lock boxes, and they're these boxes that 2 bikes can fit in. They're totally enclosed and they're pretty safe. Over at the county, they're not in use. I've been waiting for employees at the county to be real bike riders, and they've been there for years without much use. So I'm hoping there's a way that we could get the jurisdictional agencies, all of you are here, with this nice program and seek out a grant from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to get these lock boxes on elementary school sites so kids' bikes won't get stolen. In my neighborhood, we constantly see adults riding by with extra bikes on their shoulders during the middle of the day. We call them Crankensteins. Now, these are folks that are methamphetamine users and other types of activities they're involved in, and they finance their situations by doing chop shops on bikes. And we find their parts. We find piles of bikes taken apart near creeks, and we have to pick up after them and get it out of there. So I know personally a number of people who do not let their kids take that nice bike that they got them, take it to school. So you'll probably think, well, geez, that's not on ours, but it could be helped by you. That's what you folks could do. The Bay Area Air Quality Management District has those funds. They just probably have never had anybody ask for them for the use at the elementary and middle school level. And back in the day, people used to ride their bikes to high school. So that's also a site. Last but not least, on those bike rodeos, it's really a good thing, and more publicity using the public service announcements that are available through the radio stations, Sonoma Media, and get that word out there that way. There could be a place to get even more involvement without having to spend any money. They have to do public service announcements for free. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Let's go to Zoom where we have Steve Bertelbaugh, followed by Eris Weaver.
Thank you, Steve Bertelbaugh with the Transportation Land Use Coalition. And I would like to point out that what we've heard today is our future. To meet the Air Resources Board goal of a 25% reduction in vehicle miles traveled by the year 2030, we're going to have an awful lot of people start relying on bicycles rather than cars to get around. So safe streets and more bicycling is our future. I'm glad to see that lots of young people are being instructed and learn to ride safely and encouraged to ride a lot. I hope we have this going on for adults as well. And I think Eris will have something to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Let's go to Eris.
Hi, Eris Weaver, Executive Director of Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition. I can never spend enough time saying how proud I am of Christina and I, Safe Routes to School staff. She has been, I think our program was one of the first in the country and has just been built into a really phenomenal program. And my staff have been there for years and years, and they just do such a good job and put out so much time to produce a quality program. One of the things that comes up so often in conversations, such as the one that's happening just right here today, is as Christina mentioned, sort of the disconnect between everybody's got their jurisdiction. The cities, right, are in charge of the streets. The school districts are in charge of the students, but also the school grounds. And then we are doing our education encouragement programs. We can't, and actually the cities can't tell the schools they have to put in bike racks. I mean, the schools are the ones who own the property in order to do that. We can't enforce safe driving and parking in front of the schools. We've had some issues in some schools with parents park in the bike lane. And our attempts to work with we have to work with law enforcement and with the schools and with the city about changing that, right? So I'm really excited about this task force partnership program now that Christina is starting to work with, and hope that over time we can make that happen with more jurisdictions. We are going to be having to do some serious fundraising to bring in some more money for the program, because this has been our keystone source of funding for this project. But as you've heard, more and more people want these services than are able to be accommodated under that existing budget. So, which makes me very happy, because that means we're doing something right if everyone's wanting us to come and do it. But definitely there needs to be cross jurisdiction interaction. The other thing that I love are those maps that Christina showed with how many students actually live within walking and biking distance. So in some cases, a school may not have, most of their students don't live nearby, so we don't really want them, they can't walk to school. I would love to do that with employers. to look at how many city employees, how many county employees, how many employees for a particular business actually live within a distance that would allow them to walk or bike more easily to work, to shift our transportation modes and get lower GHG emissions. Anyway, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Eris. Seeing no other public comments.
Can I mention one thing
Yeah,
in response to
absolutely.
a public comment? I just want to acknowledge and sort of mention that we do have some additional funding that funds the county program. In addition to the SCTA funding, we receive funding from the town of Windsor, which was kind of an overhaul and resulted after we had a Windsor contract with the federal funding, and then bought a bike fleet and a trailer, and that helps us fund education in Windsor. And we have received for several year funding from the town of Sonoma, and we get some funding from MTC for the family bike workshops. But the county program sort of oversees all of it, is the umbrella for all of that. And we would love for other jurisdictions to, financially support the program so that we can expand, because I know that we have a set amount of funding from this particular contract for the next 4 years, but we definitely see more demand than that funding can support.
Right. Any additional questions from the board? And Suzanne, this is just a report and file?
That's correct.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the partnership, and I mean, it's always fun when we get to see our little ones riding around in a safe manner.
If you haven't done a rock and roll to school day, take a morning when you have an opportunity. It's just too much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can share that information with you, the list of schools, and you guys could participate. If a school doesn't invite you directly, we can connect you with the school.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. Suzanne, let's go on to item 5.3, please.
Great, thank you. Dana is going to take the lead on this one.
All right. Hello again. This item is about the Sonoma Marin Bikeshare Micromobility Pilot Program. So we received a grant. SCTA and the Transportation Authority Marin, or TAM, jointly applied for and received a grant from MTC for a bike share pilot program for $826,000. SCTA and TAM have joint oversight over the program, and SCTA elected to act as the funding and contract administrator for the grant. The grant funds are good through fiscal year 26-27, and they're to be used for program development, outreach, marketing, and either purchase or lease of bike share programs. SCTA and TAM's grant application focused on first and last mile connections to smart stations, and really the vision of a shared bicycles being available at each smart station for passengers getting to and from the stations, as well as connections around the cities. So a little bit of
We're having some screen sharing.
Should I try advancing it, or?
You're saying it's loading.
Okay. Well, I can keep going. All right, so I'll provide a little bit of history for those of you who haven't been following this over the years, and a refresher for those of you who have. Back in February 2020, SCTA awarded a contract to Bolt Mobility for a 3-year pilot program to implement a program with a minimum of 300 electric bicycles in 7 cities along the SMART corridor, serving stations and key destinations around, including downtowns, colleges, and universities. We worked with Bolt through some pandemic-related delays and through acquisition of the company. We completed a virtual public survey on station locations and use cases, developed market demand analysis, adopted a coordination agreement with all of the participating agencies, and supported partner jurisdictions with operations permits. We negotiated user pricing and memberships with the company, site planning and permit requests for parking hubs, and developed a draft marketing plan and materials. I will now show you the slide I'm on. Maybe we go to the and then here we go. We can stop here. So in summer 2022, Bolt ceased communications with staff and later announced closing operations. So unfortunate timing, we're getting really close to launching. And then last September, we did present an update to the board about the status of the contract. And we also brought in our colleagues from MTC to add some more context about other programs in the region and kind of current challenges with the industry. And then as of October last year, our agreement with Bolt was officially terminated, and we began working with our partners at TAM, MTC, and as well as other recipients of the MTC grant, we're also experiencing challenges implementing programs, and staff from the agencies that were participating in the contract with Bolt to determine the next steps. We explored alternatives for using the grant funds, and ultimately decided to try to find another vendor to implement a bike share program. So our agreement with Bolt required that the system launch before using any of the grant subsidies to support the program. So we've only spent a small amount of the funding on legal fees associated with the work we've been doing. Next slide. All right, so we have redeveloped our request for proposals, and in order to attract kind of a more viable micromobility program and operators with proposals that reflect a program that's based on market demand and what they can actually accomplish realistically. So the draft RFP in your agenda packet has more flexibility as well as transparency in the grant subsidy that we have available. The RFP allows flexibility in the type of micromobility devices, allowing demand to be met by a mix of bicycles and scooters or other micromobility devices. This is with the caveat that our grant funds are really can only directly subsidize bicycles, but other types of devices could be included in overall program managed under the contract. And the types of devices would need to be approved by the jurisdictions where they're proposed. In this version of the RFP, we did not require a minimum number of bicycles or scooters and did not require that they're 100% electric as we did in the previous RFP. We did not include a minimum service area, and we also added flexibility to serve communities off of the current smart corridor in Sonoma and Marin counties. Instead, we encourage the use of the work that we've already done to vet parking hubs in the cities along the smart corridor. And we did require a 2-year operating period. Next slide. So the scope of work in the RFP includes all elements necessary to develop and operate the system, including kind of a range from staffing to system planning, outreach and marketing, developing clear pricing and membership options, data reporting, rebalancing, and maintenance. And again, that's for a 2-year operating period. Next slide. So should the board authorize us to finalize and release the RFP, we will post it and distribute it this week and allow proposers to submit written questions through late June or early July, and then have proposals be due in late July and take interviews in August. And so with that, I'll stop my presentation and available for any questions I have.
All right, let's see if there's any questions from the board. Go ahead, Director Lowe.
We have a group organization in Sonoma that's doing all electric mobility they're not bikes. They're more, there's more than one person can go. I don't know what the technical term for that is. Is that the sort of thing you're looking at? I mean, they're offering some alternatives to, you know, a lot of the sort of tourist transportation that we have that is actually kind of appealing because they can, you know, we don't have to have all the cars on the road. Someone else can drive. It's a little bit safer, you know, all of these things. I'm not sure if that fits into this bucket or not. If you could just address that, it'd be nice to know. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that we are open to, you know, creative solutions and proposals. The grant specifically needs to be spent on shared bicycles. So if there is a mix of different types of devices, whether they're bikes, scooters, other micromobility, or the other term heard is mini mobility, that can certainly be included as long as we structure it so that the funding from a grant goes toward shared bicycles.
Yeah, and they are all electric, by the way. So that's you know, an incentive. We're trying to figure out if that's something that the bike path that goes through Sonoma could handle. There be a way for people to get around. Thank you.
Director Bagby?
Actually, Sandra, are those like the driverless pods that you're considering? Because that
they're not driverless. I mean, someone's got to drive them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a, and I don't know if this would fall under the category because it's not a bicycle and it's not a scooter for the grant specifically, but there's a project at the San Jose airport where they're having the electric people movers and they've already signed a contract. And then I know that it's something that I'm kind of, you know, pushing as a solution at the Larkspur station for SMART to connect riders who maybe are less mobile or, you know, or it's a considerable walk from the Larkspur
It's
station.
a micromobility
Yeah.
is the term of art that I've heard, but it's not specific to bicycles per se. And I just, I think there's a real future in alternative transportation of this type, especially in our, it seems to fit well in our area.
Yeah, can you talk to that a little bit about the, yeah, I think, well, I think you spelled it out that the grant specifically is for bike share and possibly scooters, but is there anything that in other mode that we don't know about necessarily?
Yeah, so I think that I think I know the company that Director Lowe is talking about, and I don't know exactly if I have the right term for the devices, but you know, small electric vehicles that have limited speed and range.
I think we used to call them golf carts, but yeah, that's something like that. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, and the little gem cars, maybe it's those little gem cars, which actually they use those in some airports too. There are more than just the 4-seaters that kind of you see, you know, driving around town. There are like 6 and 8-seaters for transit, and those are, you definitely are driving those, but that doesn't fall under the purview of this particular grant. Is that correct, Dana?
It does not fall under the grant purview, no. I mean, I would say that if a company wanted to come in and propose some mix of different types of devices for different areas, and it included bikes, and that's what we were paying for with the grant, then that should work.
Okay. Director Harvey?
Since there's been so much turmoil in this industry, do we have any sense for realistically how many vendors are out there and available to do this service anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to watch things in other areas, and there's been definitely a lot of turnover, but there are programs out there throughout the country that are successful. And I mean, there may be some that I am not familiar with, but I think that there's probably at least a handful that could realistically apply and you know, have the ability to run the program.
Director Hagley?
I just had a quick comment related to, I think one of the key things here is the data collection from the perspective of being able to get the information, because we have a bike share program in Healdsburg now that was launched right before it started raining and there was turnover, whatever. So we got just a little bit, but there's a lot of data that can be collected that is also going to help us inform how they're being used. Are there things that we could do as a council to tweak priorities or goals or that sort of thing? So I think that's one of the key things in here, because like you said, these companies are coming and going. We have no idea how long these grant funding sources are going to be there, but we have an opportunity with this grant funding to get some real data that we can use should this grant funding dry up in the future and it falls on the cities and county to make this happen. So that was all my comment.
Yeah, I was curious, you said something about the distance that they could go for a bike share. Is there a limited distance, or is it going to be up to the operator to suggest? Because I know one of the problems are things get broken, and just watched a Netflix show, Platonic, where they're trashing scooters. Like, I mean, I know that they get thrown and stolen. So is there a distance period that, or is that left to be determined?
Are you referring to the distance that?
From renting one to getting to your next location?
They do have that ability.
Okay, yeah, so I guess, I mean, it depends on the device. If it's an electric bike, there's usually a range of, I think that the company we were working with before had about a 30-mile range with electric power. So I think it really just depends on the device. I think that, ideally you want to have them fairly concentrated so that you can easily walk between locations where they're parked.
Okay, so it's still left open in this RFP. Thanks.
All right, let's go to public comment on this. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to provide comment? Great, let's go to Eris Weaver on Zoom.
There we go.
Okay, before you start my clock, I have just a logistics question. As the meeting goes on, some of you are getting farther and farther away from your microphones and are being hard to hear for those of us on Zoom. So please, when you're speaking, get your mouth closer to your microphone. That would be very helpful for those of us with hearing impairments. Okay, timer on. I'm actually very happy to see the extra flexibility in this contract, for especially in terms of a location for the bikes and whatever other devices are used. I have always been a little concerned about the original, we're going to have this many bikes and they have to be at these train stations and maybe a few other places, that the rigidity of wanting to be equitably distributed among the jurisdictions wouldn't fit with actual user needs and patterns. So I'm really thinking that actually having this more flexibility is a very good thing. I'm kind of agnostic on the bikes versus scooters and e-bikes and regular bikes and how all of that should go down. But the being able to have the bikes where there's actually demonstrated need and usage will be a good thing, as well as having the right data to know how they're being used. It's also very helpful to keep sharing the information about what's being learned. I know that sometimes I've had a hard time getting information from various entities and jurisdictions about usage statistics, not just on Bikeshare, but bike lockers, and which I think Mr. DeWitt mentioned in another issue. But getting usage statistics about some of those things is really helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Eris. I don't see any other hands, so I'll bring it back. So the staff recommendation is to approve the RFP for the executive director to get out on the streets, so to speak, this week. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So we've got a motion from Director Giudice and a second from Director Hagley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you so much, Dana. Let's move on to item 5.4, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and directors. Just want to do a quick mic check.
Get a little closer.
All right, I'll lean over here a little bit. So today I'll be providing a brief overview on a funding opportunity. So the Federal Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. And I'm also going to be describing the grant application that we've been working on with your local staff over the last couple of months, and asking you to authorize us to submit a grant application for the program in early July. So I did have a few slides, so you can go forward without it, but
It's the one that was in the packet, right?
yeah. So while Drew's working on that, just provide a little bit of information about the program. So the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program was established as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law as a discretionary program that appropriated $5 million over 5 years, with up to $1 billion available each year for the program. It's focused on preventing roadway deaths and serious injuries, and supports the Secretary of Transportation's National Roadway Safety Strategy and the department's goal of 0 deaths and serious injuries on our nation's roadways. So that's completely in line with our own Vision Zero goals here in Sonoma County as well. So let me go ahead and catch up here. Okay. There we go. We're in business. So SCTA and local agencies are eligible recipients for the program. So there are 3 different types of projects that can be funded out of this grant opportunity. One is to develop a comprehensive safety action plan. So here in Sonoma County, we do have a countywide Vision Zero action plan in place and adopted. And also a majority of jurisdictions here in Sonoma County also have local road safety plans that look at things in a more detailed level in local jurisdictions. So with that said, we don't really need to complete another action plan. So we'd like to build on that and actually work on implementing those plans and doing follow-up planning and studies associated with that plan. So those 2 different categories are implementation projects. That's building, infrastructure, improving sidewalks, improving intersections, installing flashing crossing equipment, things like that. But also doing supplemental planning activities. So we heard a lot about the Safe Routes to School program today. So we'd like to do some countywide planning to actually support that program. Speeds are also a very large problem here in Sonoma County. It's a significant safety issue. So we talked to our technical advisory committee about doing a countywide speed reduction study and talking about how to implement that, and especially create a message around how to do that in our local jurisdictions. So those are the 2 different categories. So let me go ahead and jump to the grant opportunity criteria. So the main thing is to promote safety, right? And to reduce injuries and eliminate fatalities on our roadways. We're able to look, as we were evaluating project submissions and project ideas, we were able to look at our Vision Zero data dashboard and see where crashes are happening in Sonoma County and where fatalities and injuries are happening, and use that to evaluate areas to focus on. The Vision Zero action plan also developed a high injury network, which shows those road segments that are more dangerous than other locations in Sonoma County. And we also identified high injury intersections for the county. So we have a lot of different tools to help evaluate how we can make progress in this area. The federal grant program also prioritizes low cost, high impact strategies. So how can we get the most bang for the buck? Serving underserved communities is definitely a priority for our agency and also the federal agencies. Public engagement for these projects is critically important. Other agency goals like supporting climate change and creating jobs is also important, and the federal government and US DOT will also be using these criteria to evaluate the grant applications. So there are a few other administrative things to keep in mind. If we were to receive grant funding, there's a 5-year window to actually expend the funds. So that means that any project that we would include in our grant application needs to be relatively ready to go. It can't be something that'll take longer than 5 years. And then especially important to SCTA is making sure the projects align with our Vision Zero action plan and those local road safety plans, that they're listed out there and they're consistent with those documents. So we actually examined the grant criteria. They released a notice of funding opportunity back in March that includes pages and pages and pages of grant requirements and how they'll be evaluating applications. And we worked with our technical advisory committee and the Vision Zero advisory committee to come up with a plan of, how to put together an application and seek to access some of these funds. So we decided it would be in our best interest to come up with a countywide joint application, not go piecemeal, package something together. And our colleagues at Contra Costa County did exactly that and were successful in getting a grant funded. So they were able to take multiple safety projects from different jurisdictions, package them together, and successfully get some money flowing into their county. So we'd like to do something like that. We'd like to include both capital projects. So those, actual things happening on the ground, include some of those projects, but also supplemental planning projects as well. So FHWA and the feds have actually said that a good portion of this money is they're setting it aside for planning activities. So even if we weren't successful in funding those capital projects, there's potential to get some of those planning funds as well. So we wanted to include some of those types of projects in our application. All of the projects need to be tied to our Vision Zero action plan, local road safety plans. Everything that was included in the list of proposed projects in the agenda packet, those are coming directly from those plans and local priorities. A few other administrative details. Administering federal grants is quite complicated. So David Ripperda on our team and the rest of the projects and planning staff are very familiar with this and can help navigate this. So if we were successful in getting a grant through this program, SCTA would administer the grant and set up separate contracts with the jurisdictions for delivery to help make that easier for everyone. There is a maximum cap of $25 million for each grant. There is a 20% match requirement as well. These need to be non-federal funds. And then, as I said before, after obligation, the funding needs to be expended in 5 years. So those are kind of the limitations that we're looking at as far as projects that are eligible for this grant opportunity. So there's a more detailed list of the projects in your agenda packet on page 49, but I'll go through just some high-level details on what we received. Back in May, we actually released a call for projects and invited local partners to submit projects that align with these goals. We received 7 project applications from 6 jurisdictions with a total grant request amount of over $37 million. So a little bit higher than that $25 million cap. So we worked with the project sponsors to revise the grant fund request amounts to get to that $25 million maximum. And you'll see that reflected in the detailed list in your agenda packet. It shows the original request and also the reduced request. So there are 5 different capital related projects, including intersection improvements in Cloverdale, citywide improvements in Petaluma, a supplemental planning safety study in Petaluma. So those are those 2 different types of projects, actual capital improvements, and then additional planning and study that could lead to future projects. The Santa Rosa Highway 1 bike ped overcrossing, helping create a connection for people living on both sides of Santa Rosa and get them off some pretty dangerous walking and biking connections. Completing some of the smart pathway between Roanoke Park and Cotati and Petaluma through the Pen Grove area. And then corridor capital improvements in Windsor along the Star Road area. So on the supplemental planning side, as I said before, we'd like to do some countywide safe routes to school planning. The city of Healdsburg also has an existing safe routes to school plan. They've expressed interest in updating that as part of this effort. We've also talked to our technical advisory committee about studying how we can implement speed reductions to help slow people down and make things safer. Healdsburg would like to do a specific targeted engineering study focused on that. And then we have a pretty robust Vision Zero data dashboard. We'd like to make some enhancements to that and also automate some of our progress reporting. People are implementing projects, building projects, and doing things to improve safety in Sonoma County. We'd like to make it easier for your local staff to report out on what's being done and progress being made. So right now we have some tools in place, but it's mostly a manual process. We'd like to automate some of that. So that's been included in some of the supplemental planning activities as part of our request. So looking at the timeline, we're right smack dab in the middle of this right now on June 12th. So we're here today with a proposed list of projects and asking you to authorize us to go forward with applying for submitting our grant application. Grant applications are due on July 10th. So we're looking at getting that in at least a week early to make sure everything goes correctly. The USDOT is expected to announce grant awards by the end of the year. So if we are successful, we'd work on getting a grant agreement executed between us and Federal Highways and getting the funds obligated, and hopefully starting work sometime next year if we do get money, and then keep that 5-year timeline in mind and wrap things up within that limitation. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn things back over to you, Mr. Chair, and just the recommendation today, or the ask, is to ask you to authorize us to submit a grant application, including the projects included in the agenda packet as part of this program, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program.
All right, thank you so much. We'll start with questions from the board. Director Lowe.
How do you work with Caltrans on these sorts of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I would defer to Shauna and David on that, but we definitely would coordinate with them all along the way. If there are projects that are happening, along one of their right of way, they need to be involved 100% through all of that. So I believe the Lakeville Highway section, there would be some Caltrans jurisdiction there. So we would need to coordinate with them. We've been good partners with them as part of our Vision Zero project. We have Caltrans representation as part of the Vision Zero Advisory Committee. So we do have good connections there. So if we do need to work with Caltrans on any of these projects, we'll do all we can to make sure that process goes well. Yeah.
Any other questions? Director Bagby?
Yeah, and Kristen, actually, but Shauna might know the answer to this. The Cloverdale Healdsburg Avenue project, is that considered still Business Route 101? And is that still somewhat under Caltrans, or are you mostly dealing with the city of Cloverdale on that one? Because that's a very important project for us. So
yeah, Shauna, do you know?
Yeah, I think it's been remanded to.
Yeah. So that makes it a lot
Chris,
easier.
if you can repeat that in the microphone so people on Zoom can hear.
Okay, yeah, the question was if Healdsburg Avenue and Cloverdale Avenue intersection in Cloverdale would be under Caltrans jurisdiction.
It's been remanded to the city. Yeah, I just did that. Thank you. And thanks for all of your work on that, Shauna. And then also on the funding at the Smart Pathway and Great River Trail at in Pengrove, is that the last bit of unfunded construction for the pathway? Is that what that represents?
Yes.
Great. So thank you. I'm very happy with this list of projects, which is not a question. I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Director Keeter Thompson.
Well, I'm obviously happy with the projects. They're much needed in Petaluma. And so with that, I'll move this.
Okay. I'll come back to you for a motion in a moment. Let's see if there's any public comment. I see nobody in the audience. We do have one hand, and that's from Callum Weeks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Callum Weeks, Policy Director at Generation Housing. I know all of you are in favor of moving this forward. Obviously, we need the money for all of these necessary infrastructure projects, but I just want to take a brief moment to not only thank all of you, but staff as well for all your diligent work in trying to bridge, our communities to our business hubs and really kind of create those integrated communities. So Thank you so much for all your efforts. I really appreciate it and look forward to hopefully realizing all these projects in the very near future. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, sir. I'll bring it back. And I am looking for a motion from Director Cater Thompson to approve the item.
I'll make a motion to approve the item.
Second.
And there was a second from Director Hagley. I'm going to give it to him because he's not here every week or every month.
I'm going to give it to you, David.
We'd like you guys to feel good.
Yeah, we want them to come back. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Thank you so much for the whole team. Let's move on then to item 5.5. Madam Executive Director,
All right.
we might just move this item until 2024.
Yeah.
All right. Clearly, there was a typo. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You should have received an email with an updated memo, not just with a corrected date, but an update on the recruiter selection process. As you'll recall, we issued an RFP. We did receive 3 responses, and after review and consultation with the chair, are recommending that the board approve or authorize the chair to initiate the recruitment process for the executive director position and to sign an agreement with the selected recruiting firm, CPS HR Consulting. They have extensive experience in the transportation sector and working with local government. And as you can see in this updated memo, their fee is $27,000. The schedule that they think they can accomplish the work over is 14 to 16 weeks. And as part of the process, they'll be developing a needs assessment and working with the board members, each of the board members, to identify sort of those key traits that you seek in the ideal candidate. So the request today is, as I said, for you to authorize the chair to initiate the process and enter into the agreement.
Any questions from the board? See if there's any public comment. I see no hands, so I'll bring it back and entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Director Giudice, seconded by Director Lowe. All in favor?
Aye.
Thompson.
Oh, my apologies. Second from Director Cater Thompson. I heard a bunch of ayes. Were there any noes? All right, the motion carries. Thank you so much. Let's move on to our reports and announcements.
Thank you. So the advisory committee agendas were included in the board packet. The executive committee did meet today to talk about the climate initiative poll and the executive director recruitment. With that, Mr. Chair, regional agency updates.
I'm looking around to see if there are any. Okay, we'll keep moving.
Then we can head over to the activities report, and I think Ross is up first.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, directors. The following is a brief overview of the communications and outreach activity during the previous month. So RCPA conducted some additional outreach to a selection of Sonoma County organizations in the interest of getting some more direct feedback on the climate protection initiative efforts to date. These organizations were identified by the CPI program committees as being important to the climate conversation, but we hadn't yet talked to them. Staff met with North Bay Jobs with Justice, Burbank Housing, to discuss the climate adaptation and resilience work, as well as getting feedback on the potential 2024 climate measure. Additional meetings are planned for June, and actually tomorrow we'll be doing some more. On that same CPI topic, several listening sessions with community groups are also scheduled, being organized with the Sonoma County NAACP chapter, the AAPIC, and the Latino service providers. The first in-person session took place on June 7th. So the goal here is to gather input from local communities who have not been part of previous climate conversations. RCPA overview materials creation. In preparation for our executive director's presentation at the June Climate Forum in Boston, staff created a new overview presentation highlighting the agency's creation, accomplishments and challenges. They'll be useful for other jurisdictions who are looking to increase climate action in their own neighborhood. These materials will also be used at the California Climate and Energy Collaborative Conference, which is starting tomorrow, being held in Santa Rosa this year. And then very lastly, I wanted to remind everyone that I sent out an email regarding the CAAC, the Climate Action Advisory Committee, and I did get some responses, but please take a look at that. Let me know if you have any questions. It is our annual nominations are underway. So basically we want you to, each jurisdiction has 2 appointees, one of which will be expiring. So please take a look and see if you want to reappoint or update, or I know there's some slots that are tricky to fill, but we appreciate you trying. And that's what I have. Please let me know if you have any questions on these or other marketing and communications activities. Thank you very much for your time today.
Any questions for Ross? Great, thank you so much.
Good afternoon, directors. Is the sound okay?
Sounds great.
So I'm Tanya Nareth, and I'm here to give a brief update on the climate change RCPA activities in the month of May. So Ross already mentioned the Climate Protection Initiative. I won't repeat anything he shared, just to say or to add to that, that as you may recall, we've decided to put our program committee meetings on pause while we're waiting for the results of the poll. So that's freed up some staff time to work on some other items related to our Sonoma climate mobilization strategy. So in the area of sequestration, we have been spending some time with our local jurisdictions in follow-up to the tree protection report that BC worked on to identify ways that we can leverage efforts across jurisdictions. And we plan to have at least one more meeting to talk with the different jurisdictions about ways that they might want to advance some of the recommendations in that report. We've also been coordinating work on the compost application pilot project that's been funded by the county's Climate Resilience Fund. So we're working with our resource conservation districts, Zero Waste Sonoma and Daily Acts on a number of pilot projects, and that work is moving forward. And then lastly, in sequestration, we have been participating on another county effort to do a carbon sequestration potential study. So this study will look at the carbon that's already been stored in our open space and working lands and also in the urban landscape, and identify the potential to increase that sequestration. And the results of that study, which should be out by the end of the year, will really help inform the work that our CPA does around sequestration, identify the potential that we have there to increase it. In the area of buildings and building energy, we continue to promote the incentive programs that are offered by Sonoma Clean Power and BayREN, which are really helping us to advance energy efficiency and electrification in those spaces. And then we've also been continuing to track the status of the lawsuit that ruled against the city of Berkeley's natural gas ban and how that might impact our local efforts. So no big updates there, but just to say that we are keeping track of that and keeping our jurisdictions informed. And then in the area of data, we are starting to look at plans for our next greenhouse gas inventory, and we'll be bringing an update to you at a later board meeting about what we propose to do there, and also looking at how we can improve the communication of our existing GHG inventory data and also other climate indicators. So information like electricity usage, electric car sales, those data indicators that we can track between major inventories. So we're looking at potentially putting together an online dashboard with those climate indicators. And then in the area of BayREN, a couple of quick updates. There are changes coming to the single family Home Plus program. BayREN is looking at reducing or has planned to reduce incentive levels in a couple of different areas. More information will be coming out about that soon, but it's really due to the high demand for these incentives and looking at the need to keep spending within the BayREN budget through the end of the year, and also other incentive programs that are coming online. So stay tuned for more information there. And again, we plan to bring a more detailed update back to the board when that information is ready. Second, one of the concerns that we often hear is whether our electric grid will be ready to handle the increased demands from our building and transportation electrification. And BayREN is hosting its next quarterly forum for local jurisdiction staff and other interested community members on this topic. The title of the workshop is called The Grid. What is it and should it shape policy for all electric buildings? This is on June 21st. They're usually like 8 to noon a time frame, and the session will be recorded. And all of the sessions that Bayren does are available on the Bayren website, bayren.org. So if you're not able to attend, but you're interested, you can listen to the session afterwards. And then lastly, with our Water Upgrade Save program, we continue to support the program in Sebastopol and Cloverdale, and really want, again, appreciate the staff and local government in Cloverdale and Sebastopol for their work on the program. It's really helped us iron out some of the issues that we need to address before we can really scale up the program. So we just really appreciate those two jurisdictions. And then we are in the process of engaging prospective water utilities in Sonoma County, Alameda, and San Mateo to expand the program beyond the two that have signed up first. So that is my update for today, and welcome any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanya. Are there any questions? All right.
All right,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Let's move on to planning.
Good afternoon, Mr. Director, and sorry, excuse me. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Directors. Adam Garcia, Data Analyst for Transportation Climate. Here to just give you a few updates on the planning team. Our work over the last month on the transit integration work. The transit survey has gone out. We received 728 surveys, which is a representative sample of transit riders in Sonoma County. The consultants, Nelson Nygaard, noted that it was actually the highest number of Spanish speakers that they've interviewed for any of their transit surveys. So pretty great sampling there. We'll be wrapping up the existing conditions survey, existing conditions report soon, and that survey will feed into the existing conditions as well. Next up on the countywide active transportation plan, we've kicked off process with hiring a consultant. We've also updated the existing conditions on our bike map plan online, which you can find, which will be exciting to see. Next on our travel model, we are in process and just wrapping up our pending and active development projects. So have a complete list of all the development activity in the county that will go into informing the travel model, which will be then moving into the next steps of reviewing existing land use and future land use in the coming months. And then lastly, could jump to the slide. We have a new addition to our SCTA website, which as the data analyst, I'm very excited about. It's a new map resources page. So we really want to be able to have improved access to some of the maps and data that we have produced here at SCTA. And so we're trying to find a nice central spot to be able to locate all that. So on our main website, there's a new map resources link that comes down in the library section. What you'll see here is actually a selection of 3 different types of maps that we'll be showcasing and adding to in the future. The first one are just your PDF static maps. So these are ones that you can just print out and look around at. The Latino equity communities. We've also got our high injury intersections there as well. So a lot of great information. Interactive maps. So those are ones that you can actually click on and then move around and zoom in, explore that. As I mentioned, the Sonoma County bike route map is updated. So I encourage you to go check that out. And then lastly, for those really intensive projects like the Vision Zero data dashboard, we have a dashboard section that really tries to compile a variety of different indicators, factors. And so as Tanya mentioned, we'll also be looking into a greenhouse gas inventory dashboard sometime in the future as well. So with that, I will wrap it up and see if there are any questions.
Great. Are there any questions for Adam? All right, thank you so much. Finally, our projects and programming update.
We have James online.
Thank you,
You didn't want
Chair.
to just walk down the hall, James, or?
I'm hiding in the back room. Now, I apologize I can't be with you today. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold that I didn't want to share with the office. But I do have some good updates from our activities report for projects and programming. I'm going to touch on 3 of them. The first one is our latest round of California Transportation Commission grants. I'll also touch on the debt ceiling, COVID relief clawback status, and wrap it up with the State Highway Operations and Protection Program account projects that are moving forward. So starting with the last round of CTC SB1 grants, Sonoma County netted $38.6 million. 30 million of that was for Smart to Windsor. That was from their Solutions for Congested Corridor program. 8.6 million is going to the US 101 Hearn Avenue Regional Multimodal Interchange. That's the last piece of the funding puzzle. Excited about that project going to the CTC in August for its final allocation of a complete funding package and then be advertised later this year. Onto the COVID relief clawback. As part of the legislation to increase the debt ceiling, unallocated COVID relief funds were to be rescinded. The California Transportation Commission pulled off an emergency meeting on June 2nd, and Caltrans staff worked into the night to allocate the funds prior to the President of the United States, Biden, signing the legislation on June 3rd. So the debt ceiling clawback was averted. SCTA RCPA staff has thanked the CTC and Caltrans for their extraordinary efforts that saved this funding for Sonoma County and across the state. The dust is settling on some of the details. We're looking forward to Caltrans's report at the June CTC meeting to get the final details on how they were able to, manage that rapid allocation as well as some fund swaps or fund transfers to be able to make that possible. Lastly, regarding the SHOP or the State Highway Operations and Protection Program, there's listed projects in the back of your activities report, as you'll see. 2 of them have hit major milestones. One's the State Route 116 Guerneville project where Caltrans is installing and upgrading pedestrian ramps. So that project is completed its design, is moving to construction, will be advertised later this year. The other one, State Route 116 at Lakeville Highway, also referred to as Ernie's Tin Bar, has completed its environmental. A roundabout is the preferred alternative. Caltrans will be moving into design and right-of-way acquisition of that roundabout. And I'll conclude with the 2024 shop cycle, which is going to be happening between now and next spring. And I wanted to let all of you know that staff will be back in July with a draft letter regarding the 2024 shop so that we can continue to advocate for Sonoma County needs as part of Caltrans' robust shop program. And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you so much, James. And thank you so much for all the work and for the entire team. Particularly for me, for the Hearn project. We've talked about what a critical connector that is for our community and just happy to see it moving forward. I'm not going to say the last money in the stack because every time we say that, the cost seems to go up. But certainly thank you for keeping that as at the forefront. Director Giudice.
Thank you. Rona Park is over the top grateful. That project, that Complete Streets project, not only ties into our roundabout, but ties into our bike and pedestrian overcrossing of the 101. It's happening in a disadvantaged community. People are walking on the streets. That's how they get around in A section. It's right in front of a very problematic shopping center that we're trying to get redeveloped. So we are so grateful. And honestly, you guys just dropped on a dime and it was just amazing the work that you did literally in a 48-hour period. And kudos to CTC too, the meeting that I observed, highly functional, just a wonderfully run organization. And I was just thrilled to observe that. So the residents of Rona Park are grateful. We just ironically had a town hall meeting at the Burton Rec Center 2 weeks prior, and we unveiled the whole thing, and they were all cheering and everything. And we're like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen here, right? So we're very grateful. Thank you.
Director Bagby.
Yeah, I don't think it can be underscored strongly enough that you guys did real hero work on that. Congratulations. And, you know, folks, many of us who are former residents and people who have spent time in Rohnert Park know how important that is to that community. Thank you. And I also want to congratulate you on getting that roundabout done out near Ernie's. If anybody has, you know, grown up around here and driven through Lake County during the summer and seen what those intersections used to be like, and now what they're like with the roundabouts, it is the perfect application for that location. So I'm really grateful that you overcame, what resistance there might have been, and really pushed through what's going to be a great solution. It's going to improve all of our lives, because we don't just live in our communities. We visit, we work, we have visitors, we take people, we go on staycations, we all use these roads, and it's going to be a great thing for everyone who lives here and for all of our visitors. So great job, and thank you.
All right, thank you, Director. Let's go to public comment on our activities reports. That's item 6.4. If you have a comment, go ahead and hit the raise hand feature on your Zoom. Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Thank you again, James and team. Let's end our meeting today with announcements. Are there any announcements from board members? Director Bagby?
I don't have anything from the past, but I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing some of you tomorrow and Wednesday at the California Climate and Energy Forum. And I understand from their website, looks like they're still accepting registrations if you haven't had a chance to do that yet.
And I'll see you there, Director. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.